Well, I would like to continue again from last night's discussion, that at this point we discussed the three levels of a teacher and their particular relationship involved in terms of a student's role in the practice, their development. But at the same time, I would like to relate with some sense of to whom they are relating to, particularly in this sadhana, that there is a sense of somewhat relating with ideal ethereal beings who are known as Dorje Trolo or Karma Pakshi. People who already exist and they died and they lived in the past. And how can we relate that as a present situation, and what is different from that in the worshipping Jesus Christ, for that matter? Such question could be an interesting one, but at this point, when we talk about Dorje Trolo or Karma Pakshi, all those teachers seem to be largely based on a basic notion of embodiment of the siddhas, which means, siddha is a Sanskrit word which means those who have able to overpower phenomena world in their own enlightened way. Or else we could say the crazy wisdom person, which is a direct translation from the Tibetan, what's known as the Yeshe Chölwa. Yeshe meaning wisdom, Chölwa is gone wild. That the closest translation that we came up with, the crazy, which somehow makes further understanding in some sense that in this case the crazy goes along with the wisdom, works much closer. So in this case, it's a craziness gone wisdom, rather than the wisdom gone crazy. So actually it should be, from their point of view, that the craziness is related to the wisdom. So the notion of wisdom here is a very touchy subject, and we have to get into some kind of technical aspect of the whole thing. And the notion of wisdom is a Sanskrit word of jnana, Tibetan word of yeshe, which means the perception of enlightenment which exists eternally. Ye meaning primordial, she means knowing, knowing primordially, knowing already. So that seems to be the basic point, that idea is that you haven't just acquired knowledge suddenly, somebody told you so, therefore you just acquired reasoning, but knowledge which exists already there, that we are beginning to tune into that situation. So that is a real idea of that actually that such thing does exist already, rather than such things are purely manufactured by scholars and the books and the scientists and so forth that we have usually. So in this case, the notion of enlightenment is the same as the wisdom in that sense, that we believe that being Buddha is not so much a being great scholar, he knows everything all about, therefore he is enlightened. But being Buddha or enlightened is because there's somebody who is actually able to tune his or her mind into that particular state of being which already exists, which already liberated long time ago. The problem exists in us was that, or is that we have overcovered with all kinds of hidings and shutters and Venetian blinds, whatever we have with us. We try to cover it up, so that consequently we are known as confused people, which is insult in some sense, that we are not all that confused and stupid, bewildered as we should be, but somewhat that we have possibilities, more than possibilities, that actually we inherit the fundamental wakefulness all the time. So that's the notion of enlightenment as well as the notion of Yeshe, that eternally wake, primordially cognitively open and insightful at the same time. That's the notion of wisdom. In terms of crazy, it seems to be a different aspect, and that is related with somewhat dealing with individual situations. When the wisdom is achieved complete in its fullest level, thoroughly, fully, then it has to relate with something or other. It has to relate with its own radiation, its own light. When the light begins to shine, it reflects on the things, usually. That's how we tell whether light is bright or dim, is whether the thing reflecting on it is bright or dim. Or if it reflects on the eyes, we could see this light is bright because I see it. Otherwise we have no way of telling whether the light is bright or dim. So since light is so bright and brilliant, it reflects on the things properly and fully and very brilliantly, so that we have some chance of knowing that there is some kind of communication is taking place in order to express the intensity of that particular wisdom light shining through. When that particular wisdom is begin to shine through, begin to project on things, that we have some communications taking place. And that particular communication is traditionally what's known as Buddha activity. Or synonym for that is compassion. And in this case, compassion, not so much of feeling sorry for somebody, that you are in a better place and somebody is in the worst place. But in this case, compassion is a sense of warmth, a sense of not having any hesitations to reflect on the things, reflect on the objects, your light. It's not hesitating on reflecting on the things. So that seems to be automatic and natural process, organic process that's taking place in that case. So since the light has no hesitation, has no particular inhibition to reflect on the things. The light does not discriminate whether it's reflecting on a pile of shit or a pile of rock or a pile of a diamond, whatever. It reflects on everything that is available there, which is facing towards that light, which is precisely the relationship of student and teacher action text. It's when the student is facing in the right directions, right level, then light is reflected as Guru Buddha, enlightened Guru, enlightened teacher, reflects on it. It reflects on its surface. And when some kind of dark corners there, that you have no receptivity anymore, that the light doesn't reach there, but light does not particularly try to fight or convert into other areas necessarily so. So that non-hesitated light that reflects choicelessly all the time, shining through brilliantly, constantly on objects, are the definition of craziness, or craziness in a sense of non-discriminating and not having any kind of cowardice attitude, paranoid attitude. Should I shine on this, although this particular object is facing on me, towards me? Not at all, none whatsoever. So whoever it is need to be subjugated is subjugated, and whoever need to be, whatever goes, the line goes. Anybody think about the line? Maybe somebody can read that particular line in the sadhana microphone. Somebody else, do you want to read? Yeah? Over there, yeah.
I think it's he destroys what needs to be destroyed, and he cares for whatever needs his care. He subdues what needs to be subdued.
Thank you. That'll do. So that seems to be the definition of actually crazy wisdom, is whatever is needed will be done. What is not needed to be is not particularly done. So that seems to be the idea, different from that of the Christian concept of that everybody should be converted into Christianity, including the stones and the grasses and the meat eaters and everybody. Into Christ principle, that it is our duty to go around the corner and to convert. But in this case, it's a different kind of approach. It's whatever's need to be reflected on it, it's reflected on it. Whatever's need to be done is done, because of what is needed there on that particular spot. So that seems to be the fundamental basic idea of it doesn't seem to be particularly crazy from your point of view, maybe, that you think if somebody's crazy, will just wouldn't leave you any space and just all over you and roll over you, vomit all over you, and diarrhea all over you, and just make you terribly crazy, extend that craziness. But in this case, it's somewhat not as neurotic as that, but it's just basic craziness, which is fearlessness, in other words, and not giving up anything. Not giving up anything seems to be the basic point. At the same time, willing to work with what is there on the basis of primordial wakeful quality. So that seems to be the definition of a crazy wisdom, or sometimes known as wisdom gone wild. And that particular concept has also a lot of things to do with not only the object reflecting on it alone, but it has a lot of things to do with the space around it as well at the same time. That the crazy wisdom person provides immense space, environment rather, that particular environment is completely thronged with that kind of charge of its wisdom, fearless wisdom, that actually if you need to liberate somebody, liberate to work with somebody, that person is actually become choicelessly become a victim of it. That you have no way to run away, because if you try to run backward, that space is also covered already. If you try to run forward, that space is also already covered. So the notion of a sense of choicelessness of this particular person that you relate with becomes very natural and open. At the same time, somewhat dictatorial, shall we say, that space is already thronged and filled with such charge of heavy enlightenment, having primordial sanity, and that seems to be our problem usually, that we can't handle too much sanity. And we would like to have a little corner of neurosis somewhere, even in our pockets, just a little puff here and there. So if you find too much sanity, you say, boy, it was heavy. That's basically what sadhana is all about, is to create that such claustrophobic sanity, enlightenment to the atmosphere, to this world. North America particularly this time is concentrating, or at least the Western Europe is somewhat hopeful, apart from England. However, that's probably a joke. Well, the idea is that the practitioner of this particular sadhana has that kind of understanding, and committing oneself to such intense experience, which is usually called freaking. But then let's dissect the notion of freakiness. What do we mean by freaking? It has two aspects. When sane people get into insane situations, they will say it is freaky and insane. But when insane people get into too much sanity situations, also it's known as freaky as well, to the other way around. So that word freaky doesn't mean anything very much. It's just common jargon that we usually use. Another word that we don't like such situations that we want to get in, that we find that is threatening to us, whatever is right or wrong or sane or insane, that we would like to actually demonstrate or indulge in our own thinking, which is not allowed in that particular situation. So that seems to be one of the interesting situations of this particular approach of crazy wisdom, actually charging and developing its own directions towards us, sense of openness, and a sense of confusion at the same time. Another word that interesting point about is that we have lots of fear about complete sanity. Let us face it. That we don't like completely being sane, completely being awakened. We really don't. That we would like to have a little home touch. In this level, that level, all kinds of levels. Home touch that we can indulge in ourselves, home touch that we can indulge in ourselves, as well as we can invite somebody else to indulge in ourselves together in a group wise. But we would like to take a break here and there. That's usually always the case, that we don't want to really be fully sane. But at the same time, we have no idea how to be fully sane, fully balanced, fully awake. We have no idea, we have never done so. And occasionally when we feel good and religious and prayerful, we would like to go up to our loft. But at the same time, the basement is more attractive. There are a lot of problems about that, basically. That we actually find there's more reference point and learning situations will take place if there's some kind of indulgence in the neurosis, at the same time we're doing our good job on the other side, which is a level of wakefulness. Sometimes we find quite heroically being sane for a long time, if there's such thing as also possible at all, coming back home, returning to your previous situations, that it is more refreshing to see things are so-called gut level, dirty spoon level, greasy spoon level. There's some kind of love, neurotic love that is involved with the our ethnic claustrophobia is always there. That doesn't only apply to the Jews or the Chinese or the Italians, I learned, but that applies to everybody's ethnic, their little world at the same time. Their grandmother's cookies, and the temper tantrums of one's own mother, and the business-like approaches of one's own father. All those things, little things that makes us comfortable to return home, is sometimes very nostalgic. That we feel that we would like to return home. And to feel those good old things. Maybe that's why the antique furniture is very expensive in America. Particularly Vajrayana's approach to reality, as far as it's concerned, it's demanding complete sanity. not being feared of it, just completely demanding highways and highways and highways of sanity, skies and skies and skies, fold after fold of sanity, and not be afraid of that. We talked about the blue pancakes last year in the Naropa Institute's Tantra session, which is also a similar kind of approach. This case, not so much a pancake as a round one, but its whole sky is self-existing dough after dough, roll after roll of pancake type space that is always there. The crazy wisdom vision is very crazy too. It also gives a sense of a direction, and a sense of heroism, a sense of reality, and a sense of consideration, compassion, and so forth down the line. And including the doubts are also part of that particular crescendo. So the crazy wisdom body is related with basic notion of enlightenment. As we say in the writing to the crazy wisdom form of the Buddhas in the past and the present and the future, I think it goes something like that. Is it true? Yeah. So it's a part of the general scheme of enlightenment, rather than some Rasputin of Buddhism got wild and he created little his crazy things, and the crazy wisdom cult is churned out. Padmasambhava went to Tibet and he got drunk and he got crazy being in Tibet and hyperventilated in his mountain air coming from India. Or Karma Pakshi went to China and he got turned on by being an imperial teacher, therefore he got crazy. But in this case, we are talking about a larger form of crazy wisdom, which is a cosmic crazy wisdom, that it is a part of the enlightened attitude of the whole thing, which is already crazy, continuously crazy, and wise at the same time. Primordial wisdom takes place continuously, which is also a very crazy thing to happen, in some sense. So we have two characters in the two particular type of personalities in the sadhana itself. Dorje Trolo, Karma Pakshi. Dorje Trolo is being Padmasambhava, early Indian Buddhist saint, Siddha, Vidyadhara, great teacher, who had come to Tibet. And he attained his enlightenment from his birth. And he brought Buddhism to Tibet, the initial Buddhism to Tibet. Earlier than that, there was some element of Buddhism brought to Tibet, but he actually brought the full swung of Buddhism, full force of Buddhism into Tibet, established Buddhism in Tibet. And he manifested himself as a crazy wisdom person, particularly when he was meditating in Tibet, in a cave called Taksang Singha Samdrup, which is now in Bhutan. In those days, Bhutan is part of Tibet. In the province of Man, as known as, in order to relate with the savageness of the Tibetans and their own little ethnic samurai mentality, that he actually had to meet with such people, had to teach people that way. So he manifests himself into an enlightened samurai, savage person, which is known as Dorje Trolo. Crazy wisdom person. And iconographically, he rides on a pregnant tigress, and he wears the robes of a bhikshu, Buddhist monk, and he wears a garment, a kimono type garment underneath, and he holds vajra in his hand, like this one, and he holds a three-pronged, three-bladed dagger in his left hand. But he is actually representing the aspect which that such crazy wisdom notion doesn't have to be related with, particularly notion of gentleness in order to tame somebody. In order to tame somebody, you can approach abruptly, directly, and just connect with their own neurosis, insanity, and they project sanity on the spot. That's the notion of crazy wisdom. Karma Pakshi, on the other hand, who is second Karmapa, who's the head of the Kagyu tradition at this point, the 16th Karmapa now, who's head of the Kagyu tradition, and the Karmapa is the founder of a Kagyu, Karma Kagyu school of particular lineage, which we belong to, and the practicing lineage. And he was brought to China when he was as a great master, accompanied by the existing Dalai Lama. Those days, which was Sakya people, they are not known as the Dalai Lama, but another abbot, another Lama, who was the head of Tibetan country, Tibetan kingdom. And Karma Pakshi went, accompanied such person to China as part of the entourage, and Karma Pakshi was all along very strange, that not in keeping with the protocols of that particular emissary that are going to China, that this particular abbot of Sakya teacher is going to become the Chinese imperial teacher. Karma Pakshi went along, he played a lot of little tricks on that journey, and everybody is somewhat concerned about his power and his naughtiness, so to speak. That the imperial court, certain point, there's some kind of intrigue took place that the abbot of the teacher didn't like Karma Pakshi playing his tricks, that he'd be thrown into jail. And by miraculous power, that the Karma Pakshi decided to turn his prison into a palace. And he was able to manifest himself as a real crazy wisdom person. There's no politeness or diplomacy is necessary in order to convert a Chinese emperor. Those days, the Mongolian Chinese emperor. That straight talk, so to speak, is important, more necessary than just purely trying to convert somebody by gentle talk and going through. Buddhism is going to be good for your imperial health. And the Karma Pakshi wasn't into it, so the rest of the party got very upset, and they were thinking that he might blow the whole trip, so to speak. And apparently he did. And he became the real imperial teacher towards the end. And there's a particular quotation or remark by the Chinese emperor by saying, the guru is great, but how about that second guru with the bearded person? How about him? He seemed to be a very threatening person. That was a particular remark that the Chinese emperor made. Interestingly, crazy wisdom situation took place continuously. The Karma Pakshi, who was a unreasonable person all the time, all along, getting back to Tibet, that his monastery was not very much built, but he ordered to build on an emergency basis. And so Tsurpu Monastery was founded. That's the seat of his holiness Karmapa now was in Tibet. So it is an interesting kind of thing that such a situation goes on through the whole lineage process. In fact, if I may just inject a little bit of our own vision connected with that as well. It's like that we want to buy this particular building, which is beyond question in some sense, or it's possibility on the other hand, but we are going to do it. That seemed to be the Karma Pakshi's vision, actually, that he would have done a similar thing. That if you're going to come up with a fantastic rich person come along, and everybody, all of us trying to be nice to this particular guy or this particular lady, and we might blow his trip completely, to the extent that he become completely switched, that his a notion of sanity is the wrong level, that he might become a great student if they're willing to take such chance. And that's a very interesting point, actually. So far we haven't found such person who is rich and crazy enough, and also encouraging enough to do such thing. But that's how Karma Pakshi plays a role to Emperor of China. The interesting point about Karma Pakshi is that he's known for his abruptness and his dedication. without saying that his intelligence and primordial wakefulness, of course, then we have another interesting person in the sadhana, which is Tisum Khenpa, who is first before Karma Pakshi, who's extraordinarily solid person, basically extraordinarily solid and sane and contemplative oriented. He did nothing but in his life teaching and negotiating a lot of fractions that took place, and a lot of chaos took place between all kinds of squabbles of different principalities in Tibet, and their fights were finally subjugated or calmed down by his particular presence, his particular effort that we made. He's basically a peacemaker person and a very powerfully contemplative type person. Then we have Mikya Dorje, who is the 8th Karmapan, who is a scholar, great teacher, and at the same time he's also very wild in his approach to reality. That he says once, he said that if I can light fire to the rest of the cosmos, I will do so. That kind of a burning prajna is taking place all the time. As far as Rangjung Dorje is concerned, he is the very key person who actually brought together the higher and the lower tantra together, an extraordinarily spacious person, and he is one of the foremost powerful exponent of the Mahamudra, which is a higher level of Vajrayana enlightenment experience, as well as he's a great exponent on Adi teachings as well at the same time. Well, I'm trying to introduce these people to you tonight, and I'm sure they are very pleased to meet you as well. And interesting point is that working with them, such powerful people, such a powerful idea, and such a powerful idea which is not a past or the present or the future, but it is simply living experience in every level. That all of those ideas exist presently, also exist in the past, obviously. Otherwise we won't be able to discuss them. Since such experience did exist, it does exist, that we have some way of relating with it, that kind of capturing their particular vision, their particular fearlessness, How are we going to do that? And the only way to do that seems to be to just to have some kind of connection, means, ways, of course. That means, ways is the sadhana self to link together. I'm not particularly talking about tripping out and taking LSD and reading the sadhana in the afternoon and trying to visualize them, trying to come them into your particular moment, or when you're particularly highly depressed or highly needing help, get them into your particular side. It's not so much as ordinary popular Christian principle of that, trying to invite God on your side, that your side is right. That's precisely the problem that we're having with the Arabs and the Israelis. But in this case, we are not trying to fight. So nobody has to be on particularly your side either, or the other person's side. There's no other person to fight with. So we are on our side. These are there. And these are not regarded as a ghost, Holy Ghost. These are not particularly regarded as Christ principle. These are not particularly regarded as spirits, that is Elijah, or whatever you have around you. But these are regarded as simply state of being that expresses ourselves in our awakened state of being. Thank you. Questions are welcome.
Rinpoche, with all due respect to Karma Pakshi, but could you tell me what happened to the Chinese emperor?
I think he's been saved. Actually, there's a story about it, that the Chinese emperor became one of the holders of the lineage himself. It's not bad for Chinese, eh?
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Nick? Somebody's going to ask a question over there? Yeah.
Are all these people the same thing as the Vajra master? And maybe another way of saying it is, if you get into it with him, are you getting into it with them?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. Well, like if you study with somebody who is actually fully soaked in their particular tradition, someone like a poet. If somebody who's a really living poet who has all the feelings and inspirations and everything, that you can actually meet Shakespeare and you can actually meet whoever they are, Yeats, or,
Okay.
That you are meeting Yeats or Shakespeare on the spot. But unfortunately, the poetical world is slightly different than the practice level of Buddhism, which is constantly transmitted through.
Rinpoche, you mentioned that the Ranjun Dorje had integrated the Ati and the Mahamudra, and was he a holder of the Ati lineage as well as the...
Yes,
He was?
he's in the line, yeah. You don't have any problem with that.
No.
Yeah.
Good. Rinpoche also, His Holiness, when he was in Vancouver, gave a Karma Pakshi initiation. And Sister Palmo said that there were 2 translations of the Karma Pakshi in existence. One was hers and one was yours. Is the sadhana that translation or what?
What I've translated is the sadhana.
It's not karma. Oh, well, yeah. Is there any relationship between the two?
To what?
Between the initiation His Holiness gave in Vancouver, the Karma Pakshi. He said it was Karma Pakshi. So, is there any relationship between the two, or?
Between what?
Well, is the Karma Pakshi principally related to the Kargyu or the Mahamudra, and then the sadhana seems to be an integration of the Nyingma and the Kargyapa?
Well, it is supposedly Kagyu tradition, which has a lot of borrowed ideas from the Nyingma traditions. That's usually any sadhana's works, practically in the Kagyu tradition.
Do the Nyingma Palamas incorporate the practice of the Mahamudra tradition?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rinpoche, what's the difference between jnana and prajna?
Jnana is basic primordial wakefulness, and prajna is a tool that you use throughout all the journeys, starting from Pratyeka Buddha level up to Vajrayana level, which is a constant examination of trying to find out where things are all about. So prajna is intellectual more, and jnana is more of experiential in some sense. But we can't actually quite say that necessarily, that prajna also has some sense of intellectual is very limited. In the term intellectual in the Western language, at least in the English language, I don't know the rest of it, which means very limited. It's just related with the books and facts and figures. But in this case, intellectual meaning seeing things very precisely as much as you could, and perceiving further, transcending your own perceptions at the same time, which is not quite a meditative state. Not a state, but it's a working of your mind. It's turned into a prajna.
Is it something like jnana is something that's given to you already, and that prajna is something you develop?
Jnana is inheritance.
And prajna you develop.
And the prajna is sympathetic inheritance, which work towards it.
I don't quite understand, but you
well,
mean
something that you have already have with you, like you could say the first prajna is that when you were born, you learned how to suck your mother's nipple. And the prajna begins from that level too, which is already inheritance in some sense.
But it's also something you develop more and
well,
more.
You don't suck your mother's nipple all the time. You know, you just grow up.
Could you talk about how crazy wisdom relates to being a human being? I mean, are we manifestations of crazy wisdom refusing to see itself, or something like that?
Yeah.
There must be more to it.
That's it. Yeshe?
Rinpoche, is Mikhail Dorje the first Karmapa, and then Karma Pakshi the second, Chunsun Kempa the eighth, and then the 16th Karmapa is the one we know? Is that right?
Chunsun Kempa is the first one.
Oh.
Mikhail Dorje is the eighth.
And Karma Pakshi is the second, I hope.
Karma Pakshi is the second, yeah.
Okay. Well, all of these people are the same person, is that right?
Well, it's like trying to say which sky is true, the sky above New York City or sky above Boston. You know, it's difficult to say.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Something.
Could you talk a little bit about how the Mahakali principle works in the sadhana?
That comes later. I'm planning to talk further on. Okay? Anybody else? That's very interesting. Yeah?
I usually think of a crazy person as being kind of out of control and also kind of dangerous because, like, I can't reason with him, I can't control him. Is there that feeling about the crazy wisdom person?
Well, I think wisdom is already wise. In other words, if you become wise, you become wisdom person. So, trying to control somebody is obviously not wise. It doesn't know anything about wisdom. So simply just being crazy. So that seems to be the problem. So if you don't have just a touch of a dash of wisdom in your craziness, you are just a flat crazy. Very dangerous, sure. But a crazy wisdom person is not particularly dangerous, but it could be, on the other hand. It depends on how much you are crazy. If you are more crazy wisdom person is more dangerous. And it works the other way around. When an ordinary person is crazy, if you're less crazy, you're more safe, right? I hope so. Is that logic, right?
I didn't quite catch it.
What?
I didn't quite catch it.
Well, if an ordinary person who is less crazy is more safe, right? Less crazy is more safe,
Right.
right?
Right.
He's going not to kill you, things like that.
Right.
But in this case, in the crazy wisdom level, that if you are more crazy, the crazy wisdom teacher or person is going to be more dangerous to you, to try to cut through your aortas of your neurosis.
Does that relate to what you were saying earlier in the talk about that feeling of freakiness? Kind of half being insane and half having a feeling of sanity?
Yeah, something like that.
When you feel that freakiness, is that the point to maybe let go more? Is that the time for a leap?
Well, I think the letting go is based on, had to be based on some kind of wisdom. You see, the point is that first you get a wisdom, then you get a crazy. That's what the crazy wisdom direction is all about. In ordinary cases, first you get a crazy, then you don't. First you get a wisdom, and then you go crazy. which is a mad philosopher.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Here we go.
Rinpoche, in the sadhana, is there some point where the Ati and the Mahamudra integrate, or is there a sense of that participating all through the sadhana?
Through the whole thing.
Through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, yeah. Gentleman over there, dark hair over there.
I'm wondering if you could reconcile something from last time with something from this time. This time you said something about that there are no sides, but last time in describing the relationship with the Vajra Master, you said something about, here's your sword, come join the battle. So who's the battle against? What's the battle against? And
I'm not so sure what you're talking about. Last time, in my connection.
You were talking about I guess meeting the Vajra Master completely openly, and then the Vajra Master, you said, would say something like, here's your sword, and I think something about come join the battle or something like that.
Yeah.
And okay, that's last time. This time, you were talking about how there weren't any sides.
In sides?
Yeah, the good side and the bad side,
yeah.
Our side and their side.
Well, so, I think they're saying the same thing. In battle, it's just simply that you're not afraid to fight. That's your sword. Sometimes people get petrified when they get their weapon, and they're afraid of they might cut themselves by accident, tripping on it, or if they wear a long coat or something. People are afraid of all kinds of things. They are not they're so coward, that if they have their sword in, they might think the whole thing is going to become accident prone all the time, which is a very coward thing. But once given the sword, you should be able to handle how your sword, which is what we discussed this time.
I still don't well, what are you going to do with the sword?
You fight with it.
But what is it that you fight? Or is this the sword of Manjusri?
Which is also a sword. You battle with your neurosis. They fight you back. It's not just chopping down, lying down neurosis, and it's not all that simple, There's a whole world coming to you.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
I guess I understand the crazy part of the crazy wisdom in terms of a non-differentiation. And the question is, and a kind of openness. But you also talked about jnana as not giving up on anything, or not giving up anything. I'm not exactly sure whether the on was in the sentence or not. It makes a difference.
Yeah.
And could you sort of tie that together for me?
Try what again?
The openness and the not giving up on anything.
I don't see any problems with that. Openness, not giving up. Openness is not giving up. I don't see any contradictions, particularly the difficulties.
Oh, you mean not turning away from?
Well, when you're open, that means you're not rejecting anything.
So it's not giving up in the sense of working very hard to get
Well,
something.
we're not talking about it, just laboring necessarily. Not giving up. It doesn't have to become a crusade or something like that.
Thank you.
Native.
You mentioned that we don't want to be completely sane. Is that because of the fear involved? And if so, why are we afraid and what can we do about it? Other than sin?
If so, what?
If so, if the reason we don't want to be completely
yeah.
sane is because we're afraid, why are we afraid and what can be done so we're not so much?
Well, why you're afraid is because you like your little own, you begin to appreciate your own smell of your armpit. And see, that's a very attractive thing, very humming. And to try to do something about that is, take a shower and try another different perspective of freshness, apart from one's own armpit, which is opening, not indulging in one's own little thingy, and just to get out. That seems to be the point.
Well, that has to do with familiarity, which is a very safe feeling, but I don't understand.
Well, nothing's got to be familiar, particularly on that area which we never taught on. Occasionally taught on, but we've forgotten, we completely closed down. Nothing's got to be very familiar, particularly, but at this point, familiarity is not the criterion. And the criteria is just a general wakefulness,
And that's
which is got to be very alien to a lot of cases, but we've got to do it.
okay. So is that the leap?
Yeah,
That's it?
got to do it. Well, friends, I think we could close this point. I think that we've